Hello everybody, I am your humble host, and today we're going to be talking about the Sonic the Hedgehog timeline. Which Sonic timeline, you might be asking? Well, it might be this one, it could be any number of these. It's probably at least like 4 of these, maybe? Maybe like 4. Maybe we're talking about one of these. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, one of those Sonics. Oh yeah, and it's gotta probably be at least one of these. Maybe at least 2 of these? I don't know, maybe a disc or 2. This one's gotta be on the list, and absolutely alongside it, we have to discuss this one, because this one's everybody's favorite, right? Right. So, yeah, and then on top of that, we also gotta get this Sonic, and we gotta get this Sonic, and these Sonics, and gotta get this Sonic, gotta get this Sonic. That's not Sonic. We gotta get this Sonic. Oh yeah, this is the good shit. And of course, we're always gonna be talking about these Sonics. Yeah, yeah, these Sonics. Yeah, you know what we're talking about. This one right here. This is the crown jewel right there. We got all of these Sonics too. We gotta make sure we count every single one of these damn games. Sonic.
Alright, after that insanity, still not sure how to transition. I've brought along Artie with me today.
Hello! I say as I wait for a car to drive by.
We're gonna be talking, I'm gonna be doing a bit of educating today.
I'm stupid.
We're gonna be discussing Sonic the Hedgehog and the entirety of this insane timeline that people started scrabbling about on Twitter, like literally moments before I started recording.
Hold up. I think you mean X?
Oh, right, sorry. Don't want to date the video too hard. X. What the layman probably knows about Sonic is that Sonic 06 exists, there was a trilogy of Genesis games, there are new games constantly being released, and it is a series about a blue hedgehog and his insane friends who stop an evil doctor. However, I'm here to start with you and tell you, what if I told you this series started a bit before Sonic even came out?
You know, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't put it past Sega.
Yeah, so this started with an arcade game called Dynamite Duck.
Dynamite ducks! More like dynamite sucks!
And this is where our story begins. There are 2 ducks, Bin and Pin, and they had a human girlfriend.
Okay, starting off strong.
She was kidnapped by a wizard, and Bin and Pin
Makes
have
sense.
to go stop the evil wizard. This kind of sets everything up into motion. You might be like, why in the heck are there wizards? Where is the Sonic? Why isn't Eggman? It just kind of sets up the fact that there is magic in this world, and that there are 2 ducks, and we'll get to why they're important later. But for all intents and purposes, and to stay away from the insanity of witches, dynamite ducks, we're just gonna go with Bin has a child with the human girlfriend, and we're going to move on.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I don't ask about Dynamite Ducks. We played it once for the channel. We're moving on to the next game. The next thing in our timeline is the game Flicky. Flickies are the tiny little animals that come out of the robots, specifically the little birds. These birds hold magic power and can basically fly through dimensions by using the giant floating rings. Inside the special stage dimension is where the Flickies begin. Essentially, the special stage dimension is what links everything together. So if you've seen things like Sonic Prime, where there's the Prime dimension in the center of all of those universes, that is the special stages.
Interesting.
In Prime, we see it all shattered, which is what's going on there. But essentially, the special stages are a way for Flickies to hide. They have magical power. It's also where the special Chaos Emeralds are hidden.
Okay.
Just know that the Flickies eventually find safe haven on Sonic's world. We don't actually have much of a name for it, it's just called Sonic's.
Makes sense, sure.
And that's where we finally are going to be opening with our characters. We have Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik, who has managed to kidnap Sonic the Hedgehog, Ray the Flying Squirrel, and Mighty the Armadillo, and trapped him on his evil island, where he's set up a bunch of traps to test their various skills. This is our first video game with Sonic in it. This is what's known as Sega's Sonic the Hedgehog for arcades. You played it with a trackball, we played it for the channel. It's a good time. It's a really fun multiplayer game, especially for an isometric platformer.
Cool.
Once they escape Eggman's lair, traps, all of that jazz, Ray and Mighty go off on their own, and Sonic is off to back where he considered home on, I believe it's South Island? I'm not pulling up my giant document of all the islands and stuff because there really is no need, and we're going to be hopping between so many islands. I think it's best if we just kind of leave that bit of things out of it. All you need to know is next up is Sonic 1 for the Genesis. After Sonic made it back to his main home island, which is a moving island, by the way. It moves around in the water.
Okay.
He comes across Eggman, has been capturing all of his flicky buddies, and is trying to find a new power source to make a gigantic something or other. And instead of letting Eggman get all of the power, Sonic is going through, and the Flickies show him the special stages so he can get through the areas faster to stop Eggman. And eventually he comes across all 6 of the Chaos Emeralds, or what he thinks is all 6. There's actually 7, but we're not gonna question it.
Okay. Numbers.
Yeah, numbers in Sonic. So far, this seems really basic, right? You might think, okay, what comes after Sonic 1, right? You'd think maybe 2. What if I told you...
No.
What if
I'm sure it's Sonic like -8.
It's Sonic 1, but on the Game Gear.
Yeah, that's understandable. You gotta port it over.
Yeah, so after Sonic got all of the emeralds, he wished to return the island back to its glory, and the emeralds shattered and, scattered around the island. Not all of them ended up on the island. Some of them ended up back in the special stage realm. And Eggman, finding one of the emeralds, is trying to return the island back to his base to make a whole new lair. So Sonic has to go back through the stages, this time taking slightly different paths because Eggman knows how to stop Sonic in stuff like Spring Yard Zone and whatnot. So he now has to go through stuff like Jungle Zone, a different path through Labyrinth Zone, the newly constructed Bridge Zone, and has to find the emeralds that are just kind of laying around.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. I mean, he stops Eggman, he wishes for the emeralds to go far, far away, and they do, and I guess that's where we should probably pick it up with Tails, right? Where has Tails been? Tails is a small two-tailed fox from a completely different island. In his first adventure, Tails Sky Patrol, we see that he is trying to stop an evil witch known as Wendy Witchcart.
Who the fuck is Wendy Witchcart?
He's kinda got a point. I haven't been over this yet. Let's go over this real quick. This is gonna be... somewhere. So, characters in the Sonic franchise act kind of weirdly across the series. From this moment forward, we're going to be introduced to a lot of characters who never show up again. I have dubbed those the classic-only characters. There are some characters that only appear in the modern series. When we get to the big split in the timeline with Sonic Generations, you'll find that a lot of the classic characters may appear again, but they were never mentioned in newer games, so it's presumed that they are dubbed by Sega to be classic characters, which means they will no longer appear in modern games and only appear alongside classic Sonic. So, let's run through at least a few of these characters. There's a lot of them. We'll be doing this again later down the line. So, first off, let's start with the classic-only characters. Now, of course, you got stuff like Sonic, Tails, Knuckles. We see him throughout the whole series. Amy. But for the first major, big first appearancer here is Wendy Witchcart. She appeared in Tails Sky Patrol, and never again. She's never even been really mentioned outside of the IDW Classic Sonic comics that they did for their annual. So, if I had to dub it, this was another classic character. Her big trait is that she transforms the island's inhabitants into robots using magic rather than mechanical means like Eggman. Another major thing about the villains is that that's not the only one. We have things such as the Rocket Metal Sonic from Sonic the Fighters, Mecha Knuckles from Sonic R, never appears again. Now you might be considering, oh, well, hang on. Wasn't there a Metal Knuckles in Sonic Advance? Yes, and that is considered a modern game, but that is the completely different machine from Mecha Knuckles. So, alongside them, we also have Bomb the Mechanic and Heavy the Mechanic. These are two characters from Knuckles Chaotix. You'll hear me mention later on in the video. All you need to know about them is that they either A, defected, or B, they were such badniks that Eggman said, you have them, and put them in the combi catcher as part of a scheme to try to slow Knuckles down. It doesn't work. Spoiler alert. Moving on from villains, though, there are a few major players. Shocker, shocker. Another more classic characters that only appear once or twice or a couple times. We have Fang the Sniper, Bark the Polar Bear, and Bean the Dynamite. All of these characters are classic only. You only ever see them in Sonic for Game Gear. Fang the Sniper, we see him in Sonic Triple Trouble. We also see him in Sonic Superstars, and he does not make much of an appearance in Generations outside of a few minor cameos. So, they're allowed to reference them in modern games, but not so much as to actually put them in there. You'll see the same thing being done with Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel later on. But all of these characters are classic-only characters. Bark and Bean first appeared in their respective Sonic the Fighters. And Fang the Sniper is reappearing in Sonic Superstars. Of course, all three of these characters did reappear in Sonic Mania alongside Ray the Flying Squirrel and Mighty the Armadillo. One character that has not been added to this list, however, is Honey the Cat. She appears in Sonic the Fighters, only in the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 ports. Let it be known that this character is based on a king of the, or not a King of Fighters, it's Virtua Fighter, my bad. It is based on a character from King of Fighters. And, of course, Bark the Polar Bear was also based on one of the Virtua Fighter characters as well. The last but not least, there are a few other characters that are only classic. The Battle Cuckoos, the 16th, known as Speedy, his father, the 15th, and Dr. Fuku... I can never say this. There's going to be text on the screen. These characters only appeared in Tails Adventure, and they have not been referenced since. Much like Bean the Dynamite, it's probably for the best. Of course, Bean's parents, Bin and Pin, are also a part of this classic-only set of characters, even though they haven't been referenced since. So I think that sets us up with all the classic characters. There are a few other things I'd like to note. Some events have to happen in the Sonic series. Some events need to. However, the length at which people care is differing. So, a few of these are Shadow the Hedgehog, Maria, and the entirety of Gun, including the Gun Commander, all has to happen. Now, it doesn't mean that things like Professor Gerald Robotnik, they all have to be a part of the series, and it's not for anything else, but it has been mentioned and known that Eggman kind of sort of becomes a villain over his jealousy of wanting to be seen, and this all started with everybody paying attention to Maria, who was sick. So, when that is your driving force, it has to be there. And without it being there, Eggman would have been the center of attention, he would have gotten the proper attention he needed as a child, and probably wouldn't have been a villain. I'm gonna say probably, because I've seen some weird stuff lately. So, but yes, I would say these are events that have to happen, no matter what timeline, classic or modern, but it's also stuff that isn't looked in as heavily into as the modern timeline. Modern timeline has Adventure 2 to start that ball rolling. The classic timeline does not. We're going to get to why that is and why the possible whys. But as we see in things like the Sonic movie, it's kind of eventuality that these things are bound to happen no matter the timeline. Other characters that are like this are the Ancients, the Coco, and the Chow. Without them, we don't get the Chaos Emeralds, the Master Emeralds, the Echidna Tribe, or anything. As well as Dark Gaia, Light Gaia, also known as Chip. These are ancient deities, they kind of just exist. But they're characters nonetheless that need to be there. They need to be a part of the story, and that's why they have to happen. You know, ancient deities, the Chaos Emeralds needed to come to Earth, they need to be charged and powered. These things need to happen. There needs to be ancient ruins. Who would have built them? The ancients, the people worshipping Dark and Light Gaia, all of these things need to happen in order for there to be set up for Classic Sonic to begin with, so they have to happen. Of course, there could have been an alternate explanation, but until one is given, that is my understanding. One final character, which we'll get to later, is Styx the Badger. She's kind of an anomaly, seeing as she appears in the Sonic Boom cartoon series, the video games, the comic books, by Archie Comics, and then later makes a referenced appearance in Sonic Frontiers, which is the newest game as of recording. So, it is believed that she is a bit of a dimension-hopping little badger, and, she's bound to make a return eventually. Just know that Sonic Boom is a different continuity, and whatever the explanation is after this episode goes up might conflict with the stated answer. We'll go with whatever the games go with and whatever Sega says, but what I am believing to be the answer is Styx the Badger is a dimension-hopping badger, and she doesn't even realize she's doing it. Case in point, the massive Sonic and Mega Man crossover, Worlds Unite. She comes back, and nobody believes that Sonic even had the Chaos Emeralds, because the Emeralds don't exist in the Sonic Boom continuity. Like I said, some things are give or take. The final set of characters that are classic only, are the hard-boiled heavies. Their appearances from Sonic Mania. We have the Heavy Gunner, Heavy Shinobi, Heavy Magician, Heavy Rider, and Heavy King. They could make an appearance in Superstars, although it's unlikely. These characters were exclusively in Mania, but that doesn't mean the Egg Robo itself is exclusive to the classic timeline, as we see in lots of different modern timeline games. The Egg Robos do make appearances. So I think that clears up all the confusion on who we're going to be talking about in these next couple sections. I'll get to the modern characters some later on in the video. But yeah, back to your regularly scheduled show. From turning all the inhabitants of the island into robotic animal things. I don't know how she's doing that with magic, because Eggman needs technology.
I remember you playing this. You played through... I don't know if you completed the whole game, but I remember watching and joining when you played a little bit of this game before.
I believe we did actually finish this game, and at the exact same time as that game happening, Sonic CD takes place. Sonic ends up on a little planet that's hovering above an island, hovering above a lake, and meets up with a fan of his known as Amy Rose, the Rosie Rascal. We're just gonna call her Amy. Eggman is trying to roboticize the entirety of the planet to make his own sort of death egg. This is gonna come up quite a lot going forward, but Sonic needed to get the time stones to stop Eggman, and he does that, and Metal Sonic just kinda is stuck on little planet for a little bit. The next thing that happens for the blue boy is that he ends up stuck in a labyrinth, because after he thinks he can finally rest, there's no more evil gems. exams, Eggman swaps out Sonic shoes with slow shoes and is forced to play through an isometric maze where Eggman can test more of Sonic's abilities.
Does he have to get to the tower by the 13th hour to defeat the David Bowie Goblin King too?
I wish it was that interesting. It's actually more like a slow walking simulator where you have to get 3 keys and get out.
That honestly sounds like... But what you just described reminds me of when they did a, Sonic handheld games as McDonald's toys, and you would, This might have been from the Spyro campaign, but you had this tiny handheld with, an LED screen. That might have been. It was so barbaric looking. You had to hold it up to the sun. I don't think we ever beat it, but you had to go around the labyrinth and find, 3 keys and shoot fireballs, so this might have been Spyro, not Sonic. But that's what that sounds like.
It's basically the same thing, except instead of fireballs, you're doing little spin dashes to get around. Sonic gets out of the labyrinth at least, and
Checks out.
we get to check back in with Tails Adventure. This is a Metroidvania exploration game where Tails throws bombs and tries to stop some evil bird brigades from destroying his island.
Why do birds want to destroy his island?
Because they want the emeralds, the Chaos Emeralds, and they've been hearing that the Chaos Emeralds are on this island.
It's valid, I guess.
And the birds are absolutely right. However, because these are evil bird doers, who else would want to show up except for the child of Bin and Pin?
No. Are they a full-fledged duck, or are they a weird anthro-duck-human hybrid?
They are an anthro duck known as Bean the Dynamite. He is an explosives expert who is absolutely insane and gets kicked off the force before even going to the island because he destroyed half their fleet on accident. He just likes the explosives. All you need to know is that he was part of their force. But yeah, he was completely ballistic. He blew up half the fleet before they could even get there. Being the Dynamite is just an absolutely insane character.
I mean, yeah, given his backstory, completely checks out.
But that's all there is to Tails' adventure. After this, he goes off to another island to try to examine the emeralds more, but once he gets there, he ends up getting bullied and picked on by some other foxes who only have one tail.
Lame.
Eggman ends up swooping in, seeing a weaker anthro character. He grabs him up to try to lure Sonic in, because Sonic essentially went right for Amy, so it might work again with another random character. And of course, Eggman decides to use Tails as blackmail for this one. This is Sonic 2 on the Game Gear and Master System. It actually came out a day before it was supposed to.
Interesting.
It was supposed to come out on Tuesday, and it came out on Monday, and this was technically the first Sonic 2 to exist. And because of the way the story kind of goes, and because it shares none of the zones from Sonic 2, it's really easy to say this takes place right before Sonic 2. Eggman wants the emeralds, and is forcing Sonic to collect them for him, and once you got all the emeralds, you basically kick them back into the special stage, and save Tails. That's the entirety of Sonic 2 on the Game Gear. If you fail at this game, Tails dies.
What?
Yeah, if you don't get all the emeralds, Tails dies, and the emeralds are just hidden around the levels, and this time around the levels are even harder to get around in because the stage design is just worse overall.
So, say you get to the end of the game, did not get all the emeralds. You're just well, you complete the game, now he's just dead.
Yeah, you just see Tails' silhouette in the sky, the game ends, and this is the end. Try again.
Oh my god.
Yep.
Jeez.
It doesn't get much better if you played it and got all the emeralds, because then it's Sonic and Tails' icons in the sky, but at least you know Sonic's still alive, so Tails is still alive.
Yeah, okay.
So it kind of checks out. The next game on our list is heavily re-released. It's Sonic 2 for the Genesis. Most people know this one. Eggman threw his Death Egg, is trying to get his Death Egg up in the air. Sonic and Tails are going after Eggman to stop him. They gotta go through the special stages, they get Supersonic, they get all 7 emeralds, and this is the first real appearance of Supersonic, and from this moment forward, he's gonna be in most of these games. And then right afterwards, Sonic keeps a hold of the emeralds this time, and heads for Angel Island, because the Death Egg wasn't completely destroyed, it just kind of landed on the giant floating island that is now in the sea. When an new island just appears out of nowhere and changes the tides, of course Sonic's gonna show up. He gets his noggin clonked in in by Knuckles, who has been tricked by Eggman into making him think that Eggman's the good guy when he's not. It's just Sonic 3 and Knuckles, really. It all the way to the end, the Death Egg at the end, the robot, crashing it back down into the earth. Sonic gets the Hyper Emeralds, and after this, they go from Chaos Emeralds to Super Emeralds, and then, since they can't hold all that power, they go back to being regular Chaos Emeralds. That's that.
At least the power scaling's in place.
A little bit, yeah. We really won't see Hypersonic ever again in the series. Won't even be mentioned, really, which is surprising. Now, from here, you might think, okay, after this, we're just gonna go Sonic Adventure, and then we're gonna get the modern games, right?
Yes. No.
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 There are...
What?
Yeah, I'm sorry to jip you like this, but right afterwards is actually Sonic Chaos on the Game Gear, also known as Sonic and Tails. This is a game where you can play as either Sonic or Tails, and you have to stop Eggman. Knuckles is kind of left alone, and this is just basically another Game Gear entry. It's just kind of a cute game. We see another version of Metal Sonic in this game. Not a lot is progressed. Then the next game that happens is Sonic Triple Trouble. This is gonna have a character who you might have heard is coming up into a new game. Fang the Sniper shows up, or Knack the
Yes,
Weasel.
I remember when they announced the remake whichever new Sonic game they just announced and that character showed up. I just remember everyone was like, them?
Yeah. So Fang the Sniper, this is his first appearance. He's a hired hitman. He's hopping around the special stages in his own little mechs because he can't normally make it into the special stages. And he essentially is just trying to stop Sonic from getting the emeralds, but he's an absolute mess up. He is a total goofball, and he's only in it for the money, so good for him.
I love him already.
Knuckles gets tricked as well into this game to thinking that Eggman was reformed. This is the final time, quote-unquote final time, that this is going to happen on a major scale like this, where it's the whole game. Needless to say, Fang messes up and drops the emeralds almost every time that he gets hit. Knuckles ends up learning the truth. Sonic and Tails take a well-deserved break after this.
Good for them. Good for them.
I know, right? After all the Chaos Emeralds were placed into the Master Emerald slots, and they became Super Emeralds, this revealed a new secret island that rose from the sea. This was known as Carnival Island. And that brings us to our next game, Knuckles Chaotix. This game does not have Sonic in it until the very end.
Okay. Is this what people were hoping the Knuckles TV show was going to be based off of?
Yes.
Interesting, okay.
So, on this island is a bunch of secret, gigantic rings, kind of like the ones that Sonic runs through to hop through to the special stages, right?
So Sonic and the secret rings?
Kind of. These rings, if you have all of them, you can get a direct link straight to the Master Emerald.
Ooh.
Essentially, it's a fast teleport right back to Angel Island with the Master Emerald wherever Knuckles is hidden. This bypasses all of Knuckles' things because it's tied directly to the Emerald. On this island, we meet Vector the Crocodile, we meet Espio the Chameleon, we meet back up with Mighty the Armadillo. And this game really is in everybody's everybody because even Amy shows up in the music player portion of the game.
See, I know little about Sonic, so I thought Vector was like a newer character from like the 2010s, because I feel like I did not see that character until probably like 2013, that era where like I was not made consciously aware of him, so I did not realize he goes like all the way back to like older Sonic.
This also had Charmy the Bee and Espio, and this is their introduction to Team Chaotix, and this is where they get their name from. In Japan, this game is called just Chaotix. In America, it's called Knuckles Chaotix, because Knuckles is the big character.
Gotta have that brand, baby.
But Eggman grabs Metal Sonic, tries to put him back together, and gives him a whole new form. They're essentially using the rings in this game as power sources instead of the flickies. So while Knuckles is going after Eggman in this game, Sonic and Tails are relaxing, comparing notes, and just kind of chilling out in the Sonic World area of the game Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn. I wanted to tie this in here because there's a bunch of little training missions, and I figured, what a better time to give Knuckles his own space to breathe and make his game playable and noticed than to just put the main characters on the sidelines for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Sonic Jam's a fine game. Knuckles Chaotix, I think, is really fun, personally. It's got this really fun mechanic where you slingshot the other character into that. Yeah, both characters are tied together with these magic rings, and you can do crazy slingshot mechanics where you're, like, warping around. We played both of these for the channel. In fact, every game on this list has been played on the channel at least once. After the end of Knuckles Chaotix, Sonic shows up and informs Knuckles that, hey, something's going on with the Flickies over on their island. It seems like Eggman might be behind it, and this was all just a diversion. Knuckles and Tails covert the island to try to get as many entries to the special stage as possible, and Sonic has to go free the Flickies, who are being used to try to find the Chaos Emeralds. Because the big thing is if you can get all the Chaos Emeralds, it's just as powerful as the Master Emerald.
And they mighty morph into the Master Emerald?
No. That's
No? Okay.
only that is only a movie thing.
Okay. Again, I know very little about Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, after they free the Flickies, stop Eggman, get the Emeralds, the next game is Sonic Blast. This is a game where it's just Sonic and Knuckles. Knuckles is still furious at Eggman, and Eggman is just kind of trying to escape. There's not much to this game. It's not worth your time. It is available on Sonic Origins, and we did play this game, but it's not worth your time. It's pre-rendered, it's on the Game Gear, and it was the last Game Gear game released in wider markets. Not so much in places like Brazil. As far as...
Or Brazil.
Yeah, this game only came out on the Master System in Brazil. Everywhere else it was just Game Gear, and even then it was like the last Game Gear game made. After this, though, Tails has found a way to create a fake emerald. Meanwhile, with Sonic Blast's ending, Eggman kind of let him be for a bit, and they got another Death Egg up into the air. It's called the Death Egg Mark II. With that came Metal Sonic in a new rocket form. Tails has made a rocket to get up there, but it's a one-seater.
Of course.
Now, the emeralds, which were given out at the end of Sonic 3D Blast to Sonic's friends for safekeeping, have to gather all the emeralds to get them back up into space. So, Sonic has to fight Knuckles, Tails, Amy, a copy of Sonic, or whoever you play as, Bean the Dynamite, their friends Bark the Polar Bear, and Fang the Sniper, which is the first time all three of these characters will appear in one game. And also, I believe you can also... Oh, shoot. I can't remember the final character. I think it's Vector. It's either Vector or Espio. I don't remember. It's been a while since I played this one. All you need to know is after you get all the emeralds, you go up into space, you fight Metal Sonic, then you fight Eggman, and then the game's done.
Incredible.
It's really just a fighting game. It's an excuse to get all the Sonic characters fighting against each other, and it's a kind of fun game, honestly. Worth a check
Sounds
out.
enjoyable.
It's enjoyable. I played it for the channel. I don't remember if we beat it or not, but we at least played it 2 or 3 times in that one stream. There's also a hidden character in the PS3 and 360 version of the game called Honey the Cat. She is based on the character Honey from Virtual Fighter.
Cool.
She is never going to appear ever again, except for some IDW comics, which we'll get there. So, the next thing that happens is Eggman is mad that he lost his little fighting tournament and challenges Sonic to a race.
That's a genius idea, man.
It's a great idea, right? So, Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Metal Sonic, as well as 2 other creations, the Tails doll and Mecha Knuckles, all end up racing against each other alongside an Egg Robo pawn. Egg Robo showed up in Sonic 3. They're just kind of a random enemy. They'll be more important later, but for now it's a race. Tails doll is using the fake emerald to search for the Chaos Emeralds, essentially matching their energy signature, and he's just kind of wandering through the place. He's barely even trying to race. Eggman is just kind of following whichever can which. Mecha Knuckles was made to keep Knuckles at bay, so Eggman doesn't have to fight him, and Amy is here just because she wants to be here. Eggman loses. Robotnik just straight up loses this entire
Who could have
thing.
seen that coming?
And is so upset and angry that he completely loses sight of why he was racing in the first place and challenges Sonic to another race, explaining that, no, Sonic, it's not fair. You can't be running, you have to be in a vehicle.
Who could have seen that coming?
So, the next game that happens is Sonic Drift for the Game Gear. Most of the same players return, minus Mecha Knuckles, Tails Doll, and, yeah, guess what? He lost again, and he is still absolutely upset and angry and frustrated, and he challenges him to another race.
This guy is just like the brilliant ID factory. Impeccable ideas.
And this is where we get Sonic Drift 2. We played both of these games once again for the channel. Drift 2, Sonic R, all of these games, completely played them. If you watched my original Sonic Timeline lore video, I mentioned that this is where we get some odd time shenanigans, because Eggman doesn't even actually remember racing in the first Sonic Drift.
Does he have amnesia?
No, Sonic Generations happened in between Sonic Drift and Drift 2. All you need to know is, for now, Classic Sonic got picked up, put back down.
I lift him up, I put him down.
Yes, and Eggman lost again on a second race. And that is the classic Sonic portion of this timeline. Everything sounds fine right now, right?
Yeah, so roughly what's the years that the classic timeline ran from?
This ran from 1991, which was kind of the start, a little bit beforehand, all the way up until roughly 1997.
Okay.
It's technically still going on. We're gonna get to how that's even possible, but for now, just know Sonic Generations allowed there to be more classic Sonic games.
Nice. I dig it.
So that is the entirety of the classic Sonic series. You might be wondering, okay, but where does this game fit into all of this? Sonic Mania here. And we'll get to that. We'll get to the fuckery of all of that. But I do want to go and clarify a few smaller points. So Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, as well as Sonic Spinball. Neither of these games are canon to the classic games. They are based on the cartoons that were airing at the time. So this one is in particular based on the Sonic the Hedgehog, Sad AM, with Sally Acorn and Bunny Rabbit and all of that jazz. So that's what this one's based on. And Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine was based on the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which we'll go into full detail later on in the video. Timestamps should be in the description below. Also, other things, collections at the time, Sonic Mega Collection Plus, which we have up here. This is one of the collections that does not actually have a Sonic game, despite most people thinking there might be because it's saying Sega Classics on the top here. But no, it has 0 Sonic games on this disc. It's all alternate Sega titles, although Sonic does make a few cameos. Another thing to note is a lot of these collections are older, like this Mega Collection Plus copy here, and they don't actually have every classic Sonic game on them. They don't have things like Knuckles Chaotix, which has never been re-released, and this collection in particular does not have all of the bells and whistles from the Gems collections, like Sonic the Fighters and Sonic CD, stuff we covered and stuff that was on the timeline list, and none of these collections have anything relating to Dynamite Ducks, sadly. Another thing that I should take note of is, yes, Classic appears in Sonic Generations. We will get to this game later down the line, but all you need to know is this game royally fucks the timeline. And speaking of royally fucking the timeline up, these games, Sonic Forces, absolutely does that as well, but it ties into Sonic Generations. So, going on into that, we have Sonic Mania here, which, alternatively, is not as canon as you'd like to think. It is technically Sonic 4, but it's not Sonic 4. So, we'll get to this one later down the line as well. Speaking of, you might think that this collection here is just a collection of Sonic 1 through 3 with the Game Gear games included, but no, it's actually an alternate Sonic In fact, it's the one from Sonic Mania. We'll get to how this makes sense later down the line as well, but all you need to know is this game fucked us up.
So this is the part where everything kind of splices itself together, right?
Okay.
The next game on our list is Sonic Pocket Adventure. This is a Neo Geo Pocket game. But our game here is Eggman starts out with his classic design. Sonic here starts out with the black eyes and ends the game with green eyes.
So we got contacts.
I suppose. This is basically a redo of Sonic 2, except with a bit of the Sonic 3 soundtrack in there, and some hidden goodies all around. It all around is like a final bow on top for classic Sonic. This really does feel like by the end of it all, you've gone from playing a classic Sonic game to a modern Sonic game, just within the design and look of this and feel of this game, which is perfect because our next game is Sonic 4 Episode 1.
Episode 1.
Yeah, this came out on the Wii, the 360, the PS3, and PC. Eggman's back at it. He's got a death egg.
What?
Go,
No way!
Go stop the death egg! And then all the while, since Sonic Generations kind of messed everything up and mixed up the time stream, and not every game is remembered or even properly there, we have things like Vector the Crocodile doesn't really remember doing Knuckles Chaotix. We have things like Charmy the Bee and Espio not remembering it either. This is also one of those moments where Metal Sonic, who was playable in Drift 2, was back on Little Planet, and you can even explain that by he got whacked out of the car into Little Planet, which makes sense because why not? Metal Sonic is recaptured and he has to play through the entirety of Sonic 4 backwards to get juiced up and powered up for Sonic 4 Episode 2.
Now, so you're saying episodes. Were these like released as episodes, like almost like a DLC or something?
So Episode 1 was put out and it was like 6 or 7 zones long, and it was essentially as short as a classic Sonic game, but you had the homing attack and stuff. And then Episode 2 came out, and it was 6 or 7 zones, just like a classic game. And you still had the homing attack, but this time you had Tails. When you downloaded both of them, they'd both read the data off of each other, kind of like Sonic and Knuckles did to get Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And you'd get this whole extra story in Sonic 4 Episode 2, where you played the Episode 1 levels with Metal Sonic.
Interesting. Okay.
The idea was to make it a trilogy of things, and all 3 of them interacted with each other. However, calling it Sonic 4 did not help these games do well, because fans could tell it didn't feel like Sonic 4. It didn't feel like the classic games. These games did not do as well as Sega wanted. Episode 2 opens up with Eggman turning the Little Planet into a death egg.
Egg. Yeah.
So,
checks out.
You know, it's up in space, the Little Planet isn't where it's supposed to be, and Sonic and Tails have to get the Chaos Emeralds and stop him.
Checks out.
Not much is really needed here. Then you can put however much time you want in between Sonic 4 Episode 2, because the next game on our list is Sonic Adventure for the Dreamcast.
Ooh.
This is a fun one to explain, because we have Sonic stories, Tails stories, Knuckles story. All of these different stories are in this game. There's 6 of them. There was a dev team of 60 people that worked on this game. It was the first 3D Sonic game that was purely 3D.
Ooh.
Sonic had the homing attack, green eyes, slightly different design, longer spines.
My brain heard longer spines, and I'm like, why did they make him taller?
He technically is taller as well.
Miracle of science.
Oh, yes. The miracle of science.
So we've made it to the modern games, and here we're going to see a lot of characters that are only in modern Sonic. Things like the Werehog. Once again, a lot of the characters from the classic games were shifted over. The Egg Robos, of course. Things like Robotnik, Sonic, Metal Sonic, Amy, Tails, Knuckles, all that jazz. But we've also got a lot of new modern-only characters with Big the Cat, Froggy, Cream the Rabbit, Cheese and Chocola, Vanilla, the Chow. As a whole, while they probably do exist in Classic, they are never seen. We've got E102 Omega, E102 Gamma, the Zero robot from Sonic Advance and Sonic Adventure. Then we've got other characters like Jet the Hawk, Storm, and Wave, who are only on Riders, but are technically modern characters because of when they were released. since we don't see them in Classic. We've got things like Chaos. The Echidna tribe technically exists in all of them, however, we only see them in the modern games. The Zeti are modern characters only. Same with Black Doom, the Wisps, the Ancients, Chip, so that's Dark Gaia and Light Gaia. La, Emerald, Gemerald. Emerald probably exists, however, since he's never uncovered, it doesn't really matter, so he's probably a modern-only character as well. Illumina, so the Nights into Dream characters, and Flowlight and Void are technically in all, however, we only see them in modern. Although Nights into Dream we do see in Christmas Nights with Classic Sonic there, so technically that's both. Blaze the Cat, Marine the Raccoon, Captain Whisker, and Johnny. All of those characters only exist in Blaze's dimension, which only exists in the modern timeline. Princess Elise the Third, Mephiles the Dark, Iblis, Solaris, all of those characters are modern only, same with Silver the Hedgehog. We've also got Cubot, Orbot, Omochao, Professor Gerald Robotnik technically exists in all of them, however, once again, only seen in modern, only matters in modern. Dr. Eggman Nega, the Gun Commander, while he probably exists in all timelines, he is modern only. Maria Robotnik, once again, same. Same with Sage Robotnik, which is the new character from Frontiers. The President only exists in modern, although he probably exists in Classic as well. Professor Pickle only exists in modern, same with Neo Metal Sonic and Metal Sonic 3.0 and Metal Knuckles, which is not to be confused with Mecha Knuckles from the Classic games. We've also got Infinite, and that's most of the modern-only characters. Other characters that are only referenced in modern games is Boom. Boom Sonic, the Boom series is referenced a couple times. Styx the Badger is the only character, though, that is ever referenced by modern Sonic, so perhaps we'll be seeing possibly some more characters down the line make some appearances from that series, although it's unlikely. But that's it, back to your regularly scheduled timeline. Sonic with the homing attack, green eyes, slightly different design, longer spines.
My brain heard longer spines, and I'm like, why did they make him taller?
He technically is taller as well.
Miracle of science.
Oh, yes. The miracle of science. Science and chaos. Because in this game, we have a new creature called Chaos. We start to learn more about the species of Echidna and the Echidna tribe. This is where we start learning about the Echidna tribe and their feud with the Owls and their whole shtick with Knuckles being the last of the Echidna. Essentially, there's these little things called Chow. When a Chow goes bad or is blackened of heart, it can turn into chaos. It'll evolve into a higher being. Now, we're not going to learn it here, but Chow are essentially... Do you remember the Coco?
Yes.
Chow are Earth versions of Coco. They're the descendants of the Coco. And Chaos is like an ancient Coco. It's got its original form. It's like a liquid monster thing, and Eggman tries to control it. But Chaos just wants the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald, and it just wants to grow gigantic and destroy the world. That's all it wants.
Yeah, valid.
However, Sonic and friends show their hearts, and Chaos goes back to normal, and ascends peacefully to the afterlife. It's a fine game, but Eggman absolutely wrecked the city to do that.
Woof.
Yeah, this is also the first instance we get of Big the Cat.
God,
We had
best boy.
Amy's story in this game revolved around her rescuing a Flecky. Knuckles gets tricked by Eggman, but only for like a level.
Poor Knuckles. Poor Knuckles.
I know, right? Sonic and Tails are kind of racing to the end. Tails starts to learn how to grow up a little bit in this game. This is character development that does not stick around very long, sadly.
Poor guy.
We just get it back. Amy's being chased because she has a Flicky. Amy helps out one of Eggman's robots learn that it can just exist and doesn't have to work for Eggman. It could hop out of the machine at any time it wanted. And because of Sonic Adventure DX, we actually see another newcomer flying around the hub world known as Cream the Rabbit, and that brings us to our next game, Sonic Advance.
Wow.
Sonic Advance is a fine game. All you have to do to beat this game is stop Eggman. In Advance 2, we finally meet Cream the Rabbit proper, and we find that Cream's mother is missing. Cream, Sonic, Amy, Tails, and Knuckles all go to stop Eggman. These are very simple games. They're like, this is what was technically considered Sonic 4 back on the Game Boy Advance. And they're pretty good games. Advance 1 is like more of a follow-up to Sonic 3, and then Advance 2 is more like, how fast can we get these characters moving on this handheld? There is like double the zones in Sonic Advance 2. It's a longer title. I played both of these for the channel, and I've gotta say, I preferred Advance 1. Advance 2 was still really good, but Advance 3 is probably my favorite. After Advance 2 and rescuing Vanilla and Choco the Chow, because it's cream cheese and Choco and Vanilla.
Oh,
Um,
snacks.
I know, right? It's just great. After this, though, we get pinball tournament because Eggman has brainwashed Sonic's friends into competing with pinball.
Wow. Another genius idea.
I know, just
Someone give this man like some sort of Nobel villain prize.
this game.
Come on.
This game is called Sonic Pinball Party, and it is. It sure is a hoot. This game has 3 pinball tables. It has a Nights into Dream table, a Samba de Amigo table, based around the rhythm game of the same name, and a Sonic Advance table. The problem is the story mode only uses the Sonic table. So you play through that Sonic table like 6 or 7 times to beat a tournament. And that sure was a video game.
Sounds like it.
Our next game is the only time Eggman is ever going to win.
What? He wins? Spoilers!
He wins. This is Sonic Shuffle. All of Sonic's friends, Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Eggman, are brought into a dream world, equivalency to Nights into Dreams, which is where we get a nice little connection to another series that I should probably talk about at some point. And they are forced to play a party game to get the Dream Shards, or Dream Drops, I don't remember. All I know is that it's a fine party game with a lot of love towards it. Eggman wins a rug.
Good for him. He deserves it.
That is the only time he wins. This game does not matter in the grand scheme of things. It is just an excuse to make a party game by Hudson Soft on the Dreamcast. And it kind of worked. Kinda. It was also a great distraction because Sonic Adventure 2 was taking a very long time to develop by this point.
How many years was it between Sonic Adventure 1 and 2?
Adventure 1 came out on 9/9/99.
Incredible.
Adventure 2 came out in 2001.
Okay, so it took some time, but wasn't like stuck in development hell. Okay.
Until I tell you that it was absolutely development hell.
Okay, I spoke too soon.
So, remember how I told you there were 60 people working on Sonic Adventure?
Yes.
60 people for a game at this time is still really low. The teams normally were about like 100 people at this point.
Mhm.
Sonic Team was 60. Adventure 2 had 11 of those 60 people from Sonic Adventure shipped out to San Francisco and forced to work on Sonic Adventure 2.
A team of 11 made it?
11 people made Sonic Adventure 2.
Oh my god, bro. That's like indie game size.
And they made a game that was bigger than Sonic Adventure 1.
Gotta give them credit for that. That's impressive.
This game involves a new character called Shadow finally showing up.
My boy. My baby boy.
Rouge the Bat is here, a thief who is also a spy. Knuckles is trying to get the Master Emerald again. Rouge is also trying to get the shards of the Master Emerald. Shadow just wants to destroy the world at first because he has amnesia. Eggman is just trying to figure out what his grandfather was doing. Sonic's trying to not get arrested by the police.
Incredible setup for a game.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
And through this game, we learned that there is another character called Maria, and it's the whole reason that Shadow was good. Shadow might have not been developed on Earth, because he's not even a natural creation. He is technically a lab experiment. He was intended to destroy the Earth, but Shadow and Sonic team up at the end and destroy the evil Doomsday weapon. Half the moon gets destroyed. Essentially, all heck breaks loose. Shadow seems to die at the end, and if you played Sonic's story first, it seems like Sonic died, but he didn't. and no one died. It's confusing. All you need to know is Maria exists. Gerald Robotnik is the name of Eggman's grandfather, and he was working with aliens and the government, because our next game doesn't even care.
Incredible.
Of course, with all that being said, I can't talk about this batch of games without going into detail over IGN's favorite character, Shadow the Hedgehog. Of course, Shadow was introduced in Sonic Adventure 2 and was meant to die at the end of the game, as we went into extreme detail with. However, they brought him back for things like Sonic Heroes, and of course they absolutely had to bring him back in for the Riders games. So Shadow was destined to stick around, to the point where he is oftentimes known as, Sonic's main rival. However, while he does play a major role in all of these games, including Sonic 06, which we're going to have to get into detail with, after Sonic 06, he really does play such a minor role that even children nowadays confuse Edgy the Hedgie here with Sonic EXE, which is a character that is not canon, and we won't be going into much more detail on him today.
Our next game is Sonic Heroes. This came out on the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox and PC. The PC port, which also was released unfinished, by the way, is like the go-to speedrunning strat here. I played the PC version for the channel. I had a lot of fun with this one. Rouge finds Shadow locked away. We are introduced to a new robot called Omega. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are going after Eggman to stop his plot. The Chaotix team, Vector the Crocodile, Espio the Chameleon, and Charmy the Bee are sent on a detective mission to figure out what the heck's going on. Amy, Big the Cat, and Cream are just trying to find Froggy and Chicola. They go out on their own, and Amy is trying to get Sonic. Enough said. Shadow's trying to figure out what's going on with him, because he doesn't think he should be alive. He crashed into the Earth. I kind of sympathize a little bit. You probably shouldn't be alive. Yeah, they kind of go, and it turns out that Metal Sonic locked Eggman in a broom closet.
Incredible.
And has just been using this new power of autonomy to control the Egg Fleet and pretend to be Eggman for like a couple days.
Good for him.
There's just a whole,
Good for him.
There's just a whole plot to learn more about the Sonic cast so he can take them all down. And he becomes a gigantic, horrific monster, and by the time he gets destroyed, he goes back to being normal. Eggman gets out of the broom closet. Team Chaotix beat him up because they didn't get paid. It sure is a Sonic game.
Sure was a game of all time.
The next game that takes place is Sonic Battle. Essentially, there is a little robot that Gerald Robotnik was working on. His name is Gemerald. He might be an ancient thing, and by the end of this game, you have to beat up Gemerald. We played this game, and it was fine.
Was game.
Can't
confirm.
It had to do with the echidnas. Apparently, a bunch of them went up into space. Gerald Robotnik was there. There is an alien conspiracy to destroy the Earth, and it's Sonic Battle. It's an arena fighter game for the Game Boy that uses 3D graphics, and it's lackluster, very grind heavy. All you need to know is that Eggman makes another Gemerald. Instead of being alien made, though, it's made by Eggman. That brings us to Sonic Advance 3, where we have to fight the little Gemerald dude. His name is Emerald. He runs on a Chaos Emerald power until the very end, in which case he swaps over because Tails fixes him. He becomes Cheese's butler, guardian thing, friend. It's absolutely adorable, and if you've never been introduced to these characters, I'd give a total recommendation to the Sonic IDW comics. There is a zombie virus plot thing, not to spoil too much yet, but essentially you find that this robot has a really big heart.
Oh, friend.
And it just absolutely adores Cream. It's an adorable sort of thing. Now we have two ways we could go here. Would you like to hear the dubious canon?
Of course. I would love to hear the dubious canon.
Alright, so they made a DS game called Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. This was made by BioWare. This game was not very good. It didn't sell well. BioWare got bought out by EA the following year.
Oof.
Sonic Chronicles ends on a cliffhanger. However, according to the Sonic Encyclopedia, this game is canon.
Makes sense.
So I had to put it somewhere. Essentially, there's an evil race of ancient space echidnas that left the original tribe. Sonic and the gang are forced to go up into space, figure out what's going on. They go to another dimension, They come back, nothing more is said, all of these characters are forgotten, and everybody's fine.
Incredible.
Yeah, I've never played this one, I don't want to play this one, and I'll probably have to play this one in a couple of weeks.
Hooray!
Hooray! Chaos! Which brings us to our next thing, Sonic Riders. This was a really hard one for me to place, but it ties into Sonic Chronicles. Essentially, the thing that the echidnas were fleeing from Earth were this ancient race of bird people called the Babylonians. Now there's only 3 of them, and they're Jet the Hawk, I believe it's Storm the Owl, and I don't remember. They exist. They're birds. They like to ride on, like, hoverboard things.
They're birds that don't fly. Are they all penguins?
I think one of them's a penguin. I can't remember. No, one's a swallow. They don't fly.
Oh, wasted opportunity.
Jet the Hawk is also voiced by Sonic's voice actor, and that continues to this day. The only reason Riders is canon, by the way, is because Jet shows up in the IDW comics and mentions the whole Riders situation.
Okay. Huh.
There's only 3 of the Riders games. The story really doesn't matter. All that needs to be known is that Eggman is selling tech to normal people because he needs money somehow.
Yeah, I mean, when you gotta pay the bills, you gotta pay the bills, man. Can't argue with that.
But this
In
game...
this egg economy, badoom.
Yeah. It's what's gonna make the yolks go round.
Ew.
Our next game is Shadow the Hedgehog. This game has like 16 endings, but only one of them is canon.
Then why is there 16 endings when you only needed one of the 16?
Technically, there's 120-something endings, and all of them have slightly variant names.
Oh my god, why?
Because replayability was a big thing on the GameCube, and gamers could not get enough of multiple endings, and for some reason this game just does that. The gameplay is fine. It's Shadow with a gun. He uses some curse words. It's rated teen, I think, or M.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. He says, "Where's that damn 4th Chaos Emerald?" And that's where we get that line.
Whoa! In that Christian Minecraft server? How could he?
I know, right? And with Shadow the
Boycott. Cancel Shadow the Hedgehog. Hashtag 2023 Shadow is over party.
This is also where we get all of the Shadow lore. Shadow learns that he was made by Black Doom. He learns to forgive the gun, military, police people. He finds out what actually happened to Maria and why she died. He also learns to just choose for himself that he doesn't have to be evil and destroy the Earth. He can just exist and be a good person.
The real lesson learned here was the power of friendship.
Perhaps the real Shadow we knew along the way was the friends we made along the way. It's just as silly as what you'd think. The next game is Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. It's just more silly bird antics.
Excellent.
It's more racing. I got nothing. However, after this point, things are going to take a wild turn because we are at the very end of standard definition graphics. And we have a rabbit hole to go down.
Oh boy.
Because it's 2006, and no one can stop us now.
What a year.
All of these games here are essentially what I consider pre-Sonic 06. Yes, some of them came out after Sonic 06's release. However, most of these games had nothing to do with the story or characters, minus Sonic Rush and Sonic Rivals. In fact, these 2 games, I'm gonna have to be blatantly honest, we're gonna have to go into major depth with them just to explain what in the heck's going on with them. So, to go along with all of this new premise, Sega went from the Dreamcast all the way to more modern consoles where Sega had no involvement in the hardware industry. And what this allowed Sonic to do is open up new fan bases and new properties. So they had to re-release things like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle for the GameCube, and even added more multiplayer stuff just to make it worth it for the people who already owned the Dreamcast version. There was things like Sonic Heroes meant to bring in new characters to basically be like, hey, look, here's what Sonic's all about, like the vibe of the classic games with none of the classic elements. So it's 3D but 2D. We got stuff like Sonic Riders to be like, look, we have racing games. Try to get in that casual party market. And of course, we can't continue on without talking about Sonic's major entries into Smash Brothers. In fact, he first appeared here in Brawl, and later into Smash for Wii U and 3DS, alongside Smash for Switch. So, Sonic appeared in all of these games, and all of these games have very little canon problems. Sonic Heroes was brought in and retconned Knuckles Chaotix out of existence, but don't worry, Knuckles Chaotix still fits perfectly well if you want it to fit in well. And Sonic Riders, while being absolutely confusing and I didn't have a spot for them until last minute, it really does make sense to put them on this line of thinking. Of course, there are only 3 of the Riders games, so who's to say? This is a game. This is a game that did not do well. This is a game that took almost 4 years of development time. This is the game that everybody memes on, and is absolutely irrelevant to this day. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. I own both copies of this game, and believe it or not, it's going to be what sets up the franchise going forward. Up to this point, we've seen very experimental games. We've seen very much, let's try and broaden the horizon of the series. Let's try not to play it safe. Let's do what we did with the Genesis. And, instead, what we have after this point is a lot of let's play it safe, let's go the new Super Mario Brothers route, and it's all because of this game's failure. However, I want to make it abundantly clear, for as glitchy as this game is, for as weird as the storytelling is, these games are not bad, and in many cases, I say I have a lot of fun with these, minus maybe the final stage. So, Sonic 06 is, probably something best left in the past. Although, if you really do want to give it a shot, I believe it's only $5 on the Xbox store. But it's still not backwards compatible, so you still need a 360. Oh well!
So Sonic 06, the game that doesn't happen.
Yeah, sure doesn't.
Sure does and doesn't. So, a few things here. This is technically like the end of a timeline, the end of an era sort of thing for them. 06 was developed as a pseudo soft reboot. You didn't need to know anything about Sonic to go into this. And it kind of closed the book on a lot of things. So, Shadow is working for Gun, all that jazz. But there's this weird Princess Elise and Iblis and Future. To shorten the important bits down, Iblis gets destroyed because Elise extinguishes the flame of its origin. Kind of a patient zero situation. Like, kill the first zombie and the rest of them go down. Blaze sacrifices herself into the void, but when the timeline gets reset, her energy had to go somewhere, and it was enough to create a whole other dimension that we're going to get to. And Silver just kind of moves on as if nothing had happened because his future wasn't messed up by Iblis and didn't have Blaze around to help with anything. So Sonic 06 kind of happens, and then it resets to right before it was about to happen, but this time it can't happen.
In summary, it was no use.
Exactly. Which is great because it made it really easy to basically be like, okay, since there's all this void of what could and couldn't happen, but Silver still is in other games, well, his first introduction beyond 06 was Sonic Rivals, and it's basically got the same plot of 06, except no Iblis.
Interesting.
Future's messed up. A future Eggman, known as Eggman Nega, is attacking using a giant fire monster. And Eggman goes back to the past to meet
his grandfather, and Silver goes back to the past to stop the start of all of this, and can't let Sonic get in the way. By the end of it all, Sonic, Shadow, Silver, and Knuckles, I believe, all team up and stop it.
And Knuckles.
Yep. So 06, then Rivals. Then we get to find out about Blaze's dimension with Sonic Rush, and we find out, oh, her timeline is full of water.
Oh boy.
The world is just flooded. Instead of Chaos Emeralds, they made emeralds based on her powers. And just kind of goes to show that, hey, when creating a new timeline, what they do is they take one aspect of a character and accentuate that. So they have the Soul Emeralds, which allows they control fire, unlike the Chaos Emeralds, which is just basically every element. This time around, it's just fire.
Interesting. So it's toasty.
Yeah. So Blaze comes to the other dimension to stop the future Eggman who hopped dimensions. Essentially, Blaze's dimension is kind of in this stillborn phase where it's kind of in all timelines but not. But Eggman Nega went to that dimension, proclaimed that he was from that dimension to try to get everybody on their side, and he was just lying. He's just Eggman from the future. And Blaze ends up following him to try to get the Soul Emeralds back. Meets up with Sonic. They butt heads because they don't remember each other from Sonic 06, and it all works out in the end. Blaze goes back to her dimension, and the next game is Sonic Free Riders.
Nice.
I don't know anything about Free Riders.
All right.
All I know is there's a story mode. It has to do with the Babylon Rogues again, and it's the last time that they're really going to be relevant. So then we move on to the other Rivals game, which is essentially Rivals 1 but dumber.
Incredible. I'm so glad.
Now Rouge Tails, Metal Sonic, and like I don't even remember the other one, are all kind of just there. They're all just doing races. They're all coming back from the future to try and stop an evil destructive force, which is an alternate Eggman. They put a stop to him, and then immediately afterwards, Sonic, Tails, and the gang get thrown into Blaze's dimension, and we find out that it's full of water, and we find out that there's this really annoying side character called Marine the Raccoon, and it's being hijacked by a robot pirate version of Eggman.
Why pirate?
Because the world is nothing but water.
Oh, it's Waterworld.
It's Waterworld. There's just not that their areas are all just like little islands scattered everywhere. Unlike us, where we have whole continents, and Sonic's world, where they have whole continents. This place is just island town, island town. They're all hopping from islands and rocks.
I will say I've never seen the movie Waterworld, but this really does sound like the movie Waterworld.
It basically is, and all you gotta do in this game is get the Soul Emeralds, get the Chaos Emeralds, and stop Pirate Eggman, and then hop back. I believe it's Captain Whisker is his name.
No.
Yeah, no. Sonic Rush Adventure is good, but it is just another one on the list. Just like Rivals and Rush 1 and Rivals 2, all four of those games just kind of patch up the plot holes from Sonic 06 and tries to get you to like these characters more because nobody liked Silver upon release.
Oh, poor guy.
Yeah, which is a shame because Silver's like the best character.
Yeah. It's no use not liking him.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the major things that I should probably mention is because of all the timeline rewriting that Silver does that changes his future, his mind is slowly deteriorating. Which is why he's got all these crazy psychic powers, right? But he slowly gets more innocent and naive as things progress. Like, he's real gung-ho about it in 06. And Rivals, he's a little bit less gung-ho. Rivals 2, even less so. And then, by the next time we see him, he's just like, I don't know, like, mentally younger, because he's just acting, like, way more naive and innocent.
Slowly, the head empties.
Yeah, like, it's just constantly being rewritten, so all he can do is just kind of live in the moment. The next 2 games are kind of tied together. We have Sonic and the Secret Rings and Sonic and the Black Knight.
Ooh.
Sonic was sleeping, and somehow got whisked into a magic storybook, and then he got called away immediately afterwards into the Black Knight storybook, and then he saved those 2 worlds, came back, and sounded like he was crazy. And
Totally checks out.
he mentions Secret Rings and Black Knights multiple times, and every time he does, all the characters around him go, I don't remember that. Neither do I. Sonic, you're crazy.
Oh my god.
After that, we have Sonic Unleashed, turns into a werehog. We learn more about the Chaos Emerald's draining powers. And this is also the first time of getting a new writing staff in. So you know all of that, all of the plot that we've been building up so far to this point?
Is that all scrapped?
Characters become pretty static for a little while.
Ooh.
So after Unleashed and the werehog and all that, they fix it. We learn about Light Gaia and Dark Gaia and all that jazz. We have Sonic Colors, which is more of a goofy thing, and we have the Wii and DS versions here. Both of these are canon. And how do I put this? Tails is Tails is reset to kind of just be side character coward. This we no longer have multiple playable characters. It's just Sonic from here on out until we get to Frontiers. And yeah, so we now have the alien wisps that show up and never go away for some reason.
All right.
And Eggman was just trying to basically harness the entirety of their planet to make a theme park that he would then convert into the Death Egg and then destroy the planet.
Why did it start as a theme park and then become a Death Egg?
Because it's in space. It's like, oh, we can mask it as a theme park. Then once everybody's on it, we can blow up the planet, and they all have to be ruled by the Eggman Empire. That's a terrible idea.
Oh my god.
And Eggman just keeps trying to do this whole theme park thing after Unleashed. Like, Unleashed had Eggman Land. And then
Yeah, I remember that.
the Colors space station that he's on is called Eggman Land.
Just lots of Eggland.
Yeah, kind of weird. And this is where we finally get another small cut here, because we're at Generations.
Ooh.
So here we have HD and 3DS. Both of them are canon. They're both from different perspectives. One's from classic and one's from modern. Eggman creates and manipulates the being who keeps the timeline together, the thing that put it back together in Sonic 06, and turns it into the Time Eater, and is slowly eating away at history to try and get rid of Sonic.
That is such a... To get rid of Sonic the Hedgehog, he's erasing history itself?
Yes.
I know his plans have failed in the past, but I feel like this is a little extreme here.
He teams up with a past version of himself, and it's all hunky-dory till Sonic comes up with his friends in the Chaos Emeralds and the past version of himself.
So everything worked until Sonic the Hedgehog came along.
Yep.
Got it.
And here's the other weird thing. This is also where we're gonna get an alternate timeline. But we didn't...
Is this our first alternate timeline, or how?
This is our first moment of a real big split in the timeline. Like, we've had... so Classic Sonic... This Classic Sonic that we saw in Generations was picked up after Drift 2. We're finally there. We're at the start. Sonic forces you to pay attention to an alternate timeline.
Okay.
So this is the classic Sonic from all the way back there. But when they put things back together, now all of a sudden there's history says there needs to be two Sonics. Where did this other Sonic come from? They made a whole pocket universe based around Sonic and his friends who got picked up. So that in that dimension, we just have Dynamite Ducks all the way to Drift 2, and then instead of going to Pocket Adventure, we have Sonic Mania. And this version of classic Sonic doesn't speak. All throughout Generations, he does not talk.
Okay.
And when they went and re-released, the next re-release of the classic games that was put out was Sonic Origins. What they did was, in Sonic CD, there were voice lines for Sonic, very minor. They were like, oh yeah, and I'm out of here. And instead, they got rid of them. To be like, this is classic Sonic. Classic Sonic doesn't speak. So, essentially...
Admire the consistency that they're having there. You know, keep it consistent.
But they didn't tell anybody. So, we'll get back to Origins Plus and that whole weird timeline. We're gonna call it the Classic Dimension for now. The next game that came out was Sonic Lost World, and this game is pretty good. We we learn about the Lost Hex, a giant floating planet above the clouds that is on Earth. It's weird.
Planet on Earth above the clouds.
Yeah, like it's an extra planet that just floats. It's got its own gravity, and everything is based on a hexagon.
Okay.
And
I guess.
up there we meet the Zeti, which are a bunch of evil Yetis, except they control, like, electronics and stuff, and Eggman was controlling the Zeti with a conch that he found.
So he had the talking stick.
Yeah, and Sonic kicked the talking stick away, and it flew away, and then the Zeti took control of Eggman's robots. So Eggman had to team up with Sonic and Tails threw a hissy fit, got captured, turned part robot because of the Zeti. Eggman took back control of his plan because he just wanted Sonic to get rid of the Zeti so he could just use his giant energy-sucking machine to power up the Death Egg robot.
I'll say one machine sucked alright.
Yeah, Sonic kicked it, Tails put the energy back, got de-roboticized, and all was well. Nothing more happened. Nobody learned a lesson, and now we have Zeti. This is just great. Zeti have been confirmed to be basically... they're basically, what if the Koopalings, but Sonic? If that makes any sense. They fill the same role. Random bosses that aren't, like, mechanized, and they're okay. The game's good, but the Zeti are really boring villains. And they keep sticking them in everything. Our next game is Sonic Forces.
Oh boy.
The Phantom Ruby is created in this timeline. It's kind of the one final fissure from Generations. We have a whiny boy named Infinite. Get his ass kicked.
Whiny?
Yeah, he...
Are you sure it's not edgy?
I would say whiny and edgy.
Okay, so like a 13-year-old
Yeah,
in Hot Topic.
absolutely. That matches it. He's wearing a mask because he got beaten up by Shadow once. He starts this whole I'm a revenge evil god thing because he got beat by Shadow one time.
This was this a fight we saw him? Like, did we see him get beat up in like the Shadow the Hedgehog game, or was this like
This was at the
like we've never seen it? This is like, oh, we're just hearing about how Shadow beat someone up.
We heard about it, and then it was shown off in a cutscene in the game. He literally did the teleport behind, kick the back of the head thing that he did to Silver and with Infinite, and Infinite threw a big old hissy fit.
Okay, so he is just like a giant baby man. Got it.
Yes. And because the Phantom Ruby exists now in both timelines, Classic Sonic came from the other dimension, and this is where we get all of our problems with splitting up the timeline like this.
Okay.
Because now, since Classic and Modern have two different timelines, and they follow mostly the same, like, story, this Classic Sonic Tales is like, it's the Sonic from another dimension! But, everything in the writing room said that it was from a different timeline, and they had scripts written for how Classic Sonic was there, explanations for all this stuff. They had explanations for all of this stuff. All of these scripts got leaked.
And then, so what happened to them?
Yeah. So I've basically been piecing things together and trying to put them back proper so everybody can understand what the hell's going on.
Fair enough.
And what's the best part about this is because this game happened and came out and was rushed so much, we got cut bosses and all this stuff. But the Phantom Ruby is essentially, let's manipulate everything, and it doesn't go well.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it would go well.
Eggman gets his butt kicked, the Phantom Ruby gets destroyed, Classic Sonic goes back to his own timeline, and I think it's about time we cover his story.
Okay.
So, like I said, everything up to Drift 2. And then and then it's essentially, so it's the Sonic Origins versions of 1, 2, CD, 3, and K. Cutscenes and all. And then after Drift 2, we have Sonic Mania, where Eggman found the Phantom Ruby on Angel Island, upgraded his robotic force into the hard-boiled heavies, and try to stop Sonic and end up fighting over the Phantom Ruby and the Chaos Emeralds by the end. Sonic gets sucked into a final portal and goes to Forces, comes back after Forces, and then we play the second story of Mania called Mania Plus Encore Mode. Where
That's a long title.
yeah, it's just Encore Mode, but it's Sonic Mania Plus is where you play it.
Okay.
But when he comes back, he finds Mighty and Ray, who have been missing for a while. And the hard-boiled heavies, one of them survived and got the Phantom Ruby, fixed his pals, and made them replay the entire thing again, but this time a little more different.
Check.
And then after that, Sonic Superstars happens, and we don't know anything about it because the game isn't out yet, but it's looking pretty good. But that's the classic timeline. It's its own thing, kinda, sorta. And then back with Forces, afterwards we have Team Sonic Racing, which is the only Sonic Racing game with a story besides Drift and R. So
it's not the only one.
It's not, but this time it's got cars. And
Okay.
and wisps and an alien Tanuki. And Eggman tries his same stick that he tried with the Zeddy, and it doesn't work. Silver shows up here alongside Blaze and Vector, and Blaze and Silver are getting along quite well, as if they once knew each other, and Silver is only there because he wants to have fun. He's not there because of any other reason. He got an invitation from a character called Dodonpa, who is the Tanuki, from the past, to go to the past to race with them.
I mean, good for Silver. Dude deserves a break.
And the entire time, he's just a complete goofball, and it has my favorite quotes ever. Sonic literally says something to the kin of "I'm gonna beat you, Silver." Silver says, "Okay," and then Sonic's like, "No, you're supposed to say, you're supposed to try and beat me too." And then he says it, and then Sonic's like, forget it, you killed the mood.
I'm so gonna own you, Silver.
Okay.
No, you're supposed to say in your dreams, Sonic.
In your dreams, Sonic.
Too late. The moment's passed.
And then our final game is Sonic Frontiers, where we learn about the origin of the Chow and the Coco, the Ancients. We find out that there's a giant evil. Eggman gets a daughter. All that jazz. And that is the story of the main timeline for Sonic and the classic timeline. Are you ready to touch on some of the weirder outliers here?
Of course.
So, if the classic timeline goes and Eggman does what he says at the end of Generations, which he says, "I should have gotten my teaching degree," We have, instead of Sonic 1, 2, 3 Mania, we have 1, 2, 3 Generations, Schoolhouse, Sonic Game World, and then the miscellaneous arcade games, because why not? Because they're all basically shorter educational titles, and there was no way I was going to be able to fit Sonic's Schoolhouse anywhere else, and people would have asked about it.
Does he have Sonic Schoolhouse Rock? Is it a musical?
I wish it was a musical. Instead, it's a game made by the people behind the animation of Terminator, trying to educate children about math and reading.
All right.
The other things that are canon to the main timeline that I haven't really gone over is the IDW comics are canon.
Boy, the comics.
Yeah, so they started up right before Forces, and they got to make a prequel comic to Forces, and at first it was, oh, only this prequel comic is canon, and then Ian Flynn got to be writer for a main game, and they said, oh no, the IDW comics are canon. So that means the Zombot viruses are canon, the Platypus is canon, the two characters they created for the comics are canon, Tangle and Whisper. The two characters that they made to combat Sonic, Technic and I forget the other one, that's all canon, and it all happens essentially. Forces prequel, the game, the IDW Aftermath, the IDW series itself, the Team Sonic Racing prequel comic, Team Sonic Racing itself, the Frontiers prequel, and then the Aftermath of that. And that's all canon. And there's a lot I could go into detail, but there are much better places online to find.
Sounds like a good time to take a trip to your local library to read up on Sonic timeline lore, apparently.
Ooh, yeah. The IDW comics are really good, though, and I definitely recommend reading them. Even if you're not a super huge Sonic fan, it'll make you a super huge Sonic fan, because it's just really well done. Another thing that happens is we have Sonic Boom, and that is the Sonic Boom TV series, the Wii U title, Rise of Lyric, Shattered Crystal, and then Fire and Ice. We also have, within that realm, the Sonic Boom comics made by Archie that are canon to the Sonic Boom thing, but not the main Sonic stuff.
So only selectively canon.
Yeah, it's all the Sonic Boom comics, cartoon, and the games are all their own thing. Essentially, it's Sonic, but what if no Ancients and no Chaos Emeralds?
Huh, okay.
And what we have from that is we have Shadow, we have Metal Sonic, Eggman, and Sonic and Sonic, Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, and Styx the Badger, who's a newcomer for this game and series and stuff. She's kind of like a crazy conspiracy theorist. But because of the comics, Styx the Badger ended up dimension hopping a whole bunch. So, Styx the Badger got to meet Ryu from Street Fighter, Ken from Street Fighter, Alex Kidd, Sonic from the Archie comic series, which is its own timeline, by the way, Sigma, Mega Man X, Mega Man Classic, Dr. Light, the Robot Masters, and all of that mess, including, at some point, the IDW comics version of modern Sonic, which would be the main Sonic that we've been playing through as the games. And, yeah, Styx gets mentioned at the end of Sonic Frontiers.
Okay.
So, you can kind of think of, all of that as its own thing. It's a little weird. Apparently there's also phone games, like, Sonic Styx was in the Styx ended up in Sonic Forces Mobile. Another thing that we should probably mention is that there is an alternate timeline for Sonic Prime.
How many alternate timelines are we at now? Roughly.
Well, we have Archie, Main, Classic, Boom, and now Sonic Prime. So that's 5 so far. It's
Lines, Ogres, and Sonic.
Prime is pretty good, but we haven't seen the ending of Prime yet. We just got done watching season 1 as the end as of this, like the second set of episodes have come out. But it's pretty good, but we don't really know how it connects to anything else, but Sega said it's canon, so I had to put it somewhere, and it doesn't fit anywhere else, so it's its own timeline, and it shattered the thing. The shattered dimension, though, is the special stage dimension.
Okay.
But that's about all I understand. We already went over the Archie comics, how they crossed over with the Mega Man series and a lot of other Capcom properties. But the Archie comics have their own convoluted story. Just no fuck Ken Penders. He's an absolute shitlord.
I heard so many select bits and pieces of those comics, and wow.
Yeah, Ian Flynn fixed the Sonic comics, and then got to carry over to the IDW comics, and then the games, but Ken Penders is still throwing his little hissy fit over Knuckles' girlfriend.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So, the Archie comics was its own sort of thing, but the other thing is the Archie comics were already based on something else. The Archie comics was a continuation or its own version of the Sonic Saturday Morning cartoon.
Oh boy.
From the 90s with Sally Acorn and all that jazz. So
And Sonic says.
No. Wrong.
Not that one?
Not that one.
What?
I will get to that one. But Sonic SatAM had Sally and the Resistance fighting Eggman and Robotnik and all that jazz, and his cousin. Eggman in this timeline isn't called Ivo Eggman Robotnik, he's called Julian Robotnik.
Okay.
And because of Archie, there's now like 3 Robotniks. I don't know, I'm not gonna ask.
Yeah.
We also have the alternate timeline of Sonic Underground. There was Sonic X, which is its own thing, which is connected to one single game called Sonic X for the Leapster.
It's tied into a Leapster game?
Yeah, the Leapster game came later. But, I mean, it fit, so I wanted to put it there.
That's fair.
It doesn't hurt that timeline. There's a lot of stuff that happens. Like, there's a character called Chris Thorndike, and if you like Chris Thorndike, what's wrong with you?
Oh my god.
That's all I have to say about that. And then Sonic Underground, of course, I mentioned it, but let's go into a bit more detail. Sonic and his siblings are born into royalty, but their mom is, like, in hiding from Robotnik, and Robotnik's, like, ruled over the entirety of the place, and they have to find their mother, and there was never a definitive ending because the show kinda sucked, and it got a full release on DVD recently.
Nice.
Archie tried to do a finalization of this, Ian Flynn wanted to, however, the TV studio said no.
Oh.
So, we will never see the ending of Sonic Underground, and that's okay with me.
Fair enough. Good riddance.
Our final timeline here is what's called The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh boy.
This is the one with Scratch and Grounder and Robotnik and Mama Robotnik and all that ridiculousness. You've seen this one. This is the one you thought.
I've watched this one.
Yeah, I own the entire series on Blu-ray, and it hurts to say that it's actually a good set of Blu-rays, because it's not a great show. This show aired for 1 month, where they aired an episode every single day, 2 of them back to back, so there's somewhere in the ballpark of 50 to 60 episodes of this show.
Ow.
They got this all done in less than a year, too, and to top that off, after the show ended a couple of years later, they did a special called Sonic Christmas Blast.
This one on DVD. I've never watched it, but I own it.
I own it, I've seen it, it's okay. Santa's real. I don't know. It's strange. But there are, in fact, 2 video games that tie into this timeline. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine for Genesis. This used Scratch, Grounder, the entire cast of the first episode of The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog's robot cast, and introduced a character called Has-Bean, who will be important to Puyo Puyo, but there he's called Carbuncle.
It's a great name.
And the final game in that set of timelines is Tales in the Music Maker. It's an educational game where Tails learns about music, because Tails in that timeline is canonically like 4.
Little baby.
Yeah.
Little baby man.
And that about covers everything. There's only one other timeline, and that is Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games.
The winter version for the Wii. I got it at a garage sale.
I have a couple of them. Not very many. But all you need to know is this is not a modern Sonic game, but it is a timeline where modern Sonic exists, and Eggman gave up to play sports alongside Mario and Bowser.
Nice. Mamma mia.
Now, there were 2 other timelines that I knew existed, but I didn't put on my list here, that I'm going to go over real quick. Lego Sonic is a thing. And
I've heard about this.
And because of LEGO Dimensions and the recent Sonic Superstars announcement, it's canon. So, Lego Sonic, it's its own thing. I have no idea what the story is. I've never played LEGO Dimensions, but it's probably just Sonic Prime, but with Legos, from what I've heard.
Guess is as good as mine.
Mm-hmm. And the other timeline only recently got confirmed. Because Sega reached out to Terminal Montage, the YouTuber slash animator who does a bunch of parody animations for video games. They officially acknowledged this cute little comic, and so that means there's Terminal Montages Sonic 1, Terminal Montages Sonic 2, and then their little comic thing. It's not that deep of lore. They're silly, goofy little shorts. And that is every Sonic timeline that matters.
How many are there that don't matter?
At least 5.
Wow.
I haven't covered the movies, but now you know a lot more about Sonic, and before I branch off and do a weird rant thing at the end here, what do you think of this mess?
It started out fairly straightforward, and like it seemed to be like, all right, we've got this going in a direction, and then it got made way more complicated than it really needed to be. Seems like there's a lot of content you can do in the Sonic universe, and it doesn't seem like you have to keep starting a new Sonic universe every time you want to do something else, you know?
Well, the biggest issue was they started this early. When Sonic 2 was coming out, they greenlit the Sat AM cartoon, The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, the games, and then there was also the Sonic OVA. All of those got greenlit around the same time. So, as well as the Archie comics, which got greenlit a little while later, so we had already off the bat 5 different things. The games, 2 cartoon shows, a comic book, and a random Japanese OVA.
Like, you know, in the last couple of years, they're like, oh, Marvel's doing the cinematic universe, let's do the Sonic cinematic universe of games.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't understand why they did this, but I get it, like, marketing-wise, it makes sense, but it really is a mess. And there are weird continuity errors all over the place, like Eggman shooting the moon, and the moon not being destroyed and other things. And then, like, Shadow just kind of forgiving Gun immediately. The Sonic timeline, at the end of the day, does not matter. Enjoy these games however you want, but making a mess... This is just a mess that required me to take a year of my time to detangle it, to understand it. To hopefully make more people understand that this stuff makes sense in some weird, convoluted way.
It works, but you gotta do some legwork to make it work.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. It is 7:30 as I finish recording and editing this. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys like and subscribe and all that. Follow me on Twitter at GavinDragonYT. You can donate to the PayPal on your screen or in the description. Here soon we might have a join button, but only if you guys could help. We've also got videos to click on, a Discord down there, a Telegram art dump where I post all my artwork, and yeah, no, I think that's about it. You guys know way more about the Sonic timeline than I probably do.
With all that, I've been your humble host. Good night, everybody.